I've always been a light sleeper. Linda says it's because I worried too much about the garage, bills, customer complaints, that transmission we couldn't fix last week. Maybe she's right. 27 years of marriage, and she still reads me better than I read myself sometimes. But that night, it wasn't anxiety that woke me. It was the faint blue glow of a phone screen at 1:47 a.m. My phone vibrated on the nightstand, screen lighting up with a notification. An unknown number. I reached for it, squinting at the sudden brightness in our dark bedroom. The message simply read, "Already missing you. When can you get away?" I frowned, thumb hovering over the screen. Wrong number, obviously. I was about to put it back when I noticed something strange. Linda's phone had lit up at the exact same moment, and the way she lunged for it, that quick, panicked movement, it wasn't normal. She turned away, shielding the screen as she frantically tapped something, then set it down carefully, screen side down. "Everything okay?" I whispered. "Just spam," she mumbled, settling back into bed. "Go back to sleep, George." I laid there in the darkness, listening to her breathing. After 27 years, you learn the rhythm of your partner's sleep. Linda wasn't sleeping. She was waiting for me to drift off. So I gave her what she wanted. I steadied my breathing, made it deeper, more regular, all while my mind raced with possibilities I didn't want to consider. We'd built a life together. The small auto shop I'd scraped together when we were young had supported us through 2 kids in college, a mortgage, and Linda's mother's medical bills. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable, solid. At least I thought we were. Next morning, I moved through our usual routine. Coffee brewing, toast in the toaster, morning news on the small kitchen TV, but everything felt off-kilter, like walking with one shoe slightly higher than the other. Linda hummed as she packed her lunch for work, same as always. 27 years of the same morning dance, and suddenly I was watching a stranger. When she went to shower, I did something I'd never done before. I picked up her phone. The passcode hadn't changed in years, our anniversary date. The message from the unknown number was gone, deleted. The contact, if it ever existed, gone too. I stared at her call history, pristine and innocent. Too pristine. I wasn't a jealous man. Never had been. Trust had always come easily to me, maybe because I'd never had reason to doubt. Until now. I memorized the number from my phone and put hers back exactly where she'd left it. Some part of me hoped I was wrong, that there was a simple explanation, that the knot forming in my stomach was just paranoia. But I knew. In that moment, I knew. 27 years of certainty shattered by one text message sent to the wrong phone. I waited until I heard the shower running, steady and reassuring, before I made the call. My fingers trembled slightly as I dialed the number I'd memorized from my own phone. 3 rings. 4. I was about to hang up when someone answered. "Hello?" A man's voice, young, confident. I said nothing, just listened to the background noise, music playing, something with a heavy bass. "Hello?" he repeated. Then his tone changed entirely. "Hey, babe, I told you not to call, remember?" Better to text. "We still on for tomorrow?" My throat closed up. I couldn't have spoken if I wanted to. I ended the call and set the phone down on the kitchen counter with deliberate care, like it might explode if handled roughly. 27 years, nearly 3 decades of shared meals, mortgages, parent-teacher conferences, and holiday dinners with the in-laws. How many times had Linda reached for my hand across the console while I drove? How many times had I kissed her forehead when she fell asleep on my shoulder during movie nights? The shower upstairs shut off. I had maybe 5 minutes before she'd come down, hair wrapped in a towel, smelling of that lavender soap she'd been using since our 10th anniversary. The one I bought her every Christmas because she once mentioned how much she loved it. I needed to be sure. Absolutely sure. My hands no longer shaking, I opened my messaging app and typed out a text, to the unknown number. Plan still the same. Expecting me tomorrow? I hit send and waited, counting heartbeats. The response came almost immediately. You know I am. Miss your voice. Just be careful. I stared at the message as the room seemed to tilt around me. Careful. Be careful. Because I was waiting at home, oblivious. The fool in the garage with grease under his fingernails, worrying about carburetors and timing belts while his wife of 27 years was. The stairs creaked. Linda was coming down. I deleted the messages, both sent and received, and slipped my phone into my pocket just as she rounded the corner. Everything okay? Linda asked, cinching her robe tighter around her waist. You look like you've seen a ghost. Just work stuff, I managed, turning back to my coffee. Johnson called about his Buick. Transmission's worse than we thought. The lie came easily, surprising me. I'd always been a terrible liar. Linda could read it on my face, she always said. But now, watching her nod sympathetically, I realized she couldn't see through me at all. Or maybe she just wasn't looking anymore. I have that lunch with Diane today, she said, pouring herself coffee. Might run late. Diane? Her friend from the book club? Or was that another lie? How many casual mentions of running late or lunch with friends had I accepted without question over the years? No problem, I said. I'll probably work late too. We moved around each other in the kitchen, a domestic choreography perfected over decades. But now every movement felt calculated, every word weighted. As she buttered her toast, I studied her hands, the same hands that had held our children, that wore the wedding band I'd saved for months to buy, the same hands that now typed messages to him. What? She asked, catching me watching her. Nothing, I said. Just thinking about how much work I've got today. The drive to my shop was a blur. I parked in my usual spot behind the building, but couldn't bring myself to go inside. Instead, I sat there, engine off, staring at nothing. What was he like, this man who'd made my wife feel she needed to be careful? Younger, certainly. More exciting than a mechanic pushing 60 with bad knees and thinning hair? Did he make her laugh? Did she tell him about her day the way she used to tell me? I pulled out my phone and typed another message to the number. What time exactly? The reply popped up almost instantly. 2:30 like always. Hotel, room 412. I checked my watch. It was 8:17 a.m., 6 hours and 13 minutes until my wife of 27 years would meet her lover in room 412. I went through the motions at the garage all morning, changed oil, replaced brake pads, nodded along to customers complaining about noises under the hood. My hands worked on autopilot while my mind spun in endless circles. You all right, boss? Mike, my assistant manager, was looking at me with concern. You put that filter on backwards. I glanced down. He was right. Just distracted, I muttered, fixing my mistake. Didn't sleep well? Mike nodded, not pressing further. Good kid. Been with me almost 10 years now, worked his way up from sweeping the shop floor. The garage had been my life's work. I'd sacrificed weekends, vacations, time with my kids when they were young, all to build something solid, something that would last. Unlike my marriage, apparently. At noon, I told Mike I had an errand to run. I drove across town to the only hotel that might have a room 412, the Parkview Inn, a mid-range business hotel where they hosted conferences and where out-of-town clients often stayed. Nothing fancy, but clean and discreet. I parked across the street and watched the entrance. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. What was I doing here? What was I hoping to see? The truth, I supposed. The undeniable truth. I checked my phone, 1:45 p.m. If her lover was right, Linda would arrive in about 45 minutes. Part of me wanted to confront them both right there in the lobby, make a scene, let everyone know what they'd done. But another part, a colder, more calculating part I hadn't known existed inside me, wanted something different, something more satisfying than a public shouting match. I started my truck and drove back to our house. Linda wouldn't be home. She was at lunch with Diane, after all. I let myself in and headed straight for the bedroom. I knew exactly what I needed to do. The plan forming in my mind wasn't about rage or violence. It was about clarity, about control, about making sure Linda understood exactly what she was throwing away, and making sure I walked away with my dignity intact. After 27 years, I deserved at least that much. Back home, I moved with a strange sense of calm. Our bedroom, once a sanctuary, now felt like a crime scene. I opened Linda's closet and breathed in her familiar scent, a mixture of lavender and that expensive perfume I'd given her for our 25th anniversary, 2 years ago. Had she been faithful then? I studied her things, the orderly rows of shoes, the color-coordinated blouses, the jewelry box on her dresser, everything in its place, just like our lives. Or so I'd thought. I didn't ransack drawers or tear through her belongings like some unhinged, jealous husband in a TV drama. Instead, I pulled out her suitcase, the small one she used for overnight trips, and placed it open on our bed. Then I systematically selected items: her favorite blouse, the jeans she said made her feel young, matching underwear, her travel toiletry bag. I packed with care, the way I'd seen her do countless times before weekend trips to visit her sister. Next, I went to my study and retrieved a folder of important documents. Our marriage certificate was there, yellowed with age. 27 years. I placed it on top of her packed clothes. 2:15 p.m. If Linda was sticking to the schedule, she'd be heading to the hotel soon. I took a bottle of wine from the rack, the expensive Cabernet we'd been saving for our anniversary, and 2 glasses from the cabinet. I placed them on the dining room table, carefully arranged like a still life, a romantic scene waiting for its actors. I sent another text to the number: running a little late, stall for time, maybe get a drink at the bar downstairs first. I'll be there as soon as I can. No problem, came the reply. I'll wait for you at the bar. Perfect. That would keep both of them out of room 412 a little longer. I drove back to the Parkview Inn, parked in the lot this time. No more hiding across the street. The lobby was modern but generic. Beige walls, inoffensive art, the smell of coffee and cleaning products. The front desk clerk barely looked up as I crossed to the elevators. "Excuse me," I said. "I need to get into room 412. My wife's already checked in, but I forgot our room key." The clerk looked up, bored. "Name on the reservation?" I hadn't thought that far ahead, but I knew hotels. Years of business trips had taught me a few things. "Actually, I'm not sure whose name it's under," I said, with a self-deprecating smile. "Could be my assistant who booked it. I just know it's 412. My wife texted me the room number." The clerk looked skeptical. I pulled out my wallet, slid my credit card and driver's license across the counter. "Look, I'm happy to show ID. Just need to drop off our bags before meeting my wife downstairs." He glanced at my gray hair, my wedding ring, the respectable clothes I'd changed into at home. I didn't look like a threat. After a moment, he programmed a key card. "Enjoy your stay, Mr. Wilson." I took the elevator to the 4th floor, key card burning in my pocket. Room 412 was unremarkable, just like dozens of hotel rooms I'd stayed in over the years for auto parts conventions and industry seminars. Queen bed with too many pillows, desk with a lamp and hotel stationery, TV mounted on the wall, the air conditioning hummed softly. I stood in the center of the room, suddenly uncertain about what I'd actually come here to do. Catch them in the act? Leave some dramatic message? The suitcase and marriage certificate I'd packed now seemed like props from someone else's life, theatrical gestures that didn't fit the hollow feeling expanding in my chest. I checked my watch. 2:40 p.m. Linda was probably in the hotel bar right now, waiting for her lover, annoyed at the delay I'd manufactured. I sat on the edge of the bed, bouncing slightly to test the firmness. How many times had they met here? Was it always the same room? I tried to picture Linda checking in at the front desk, riding the elevator, walking this hallway. Did she feel guilty? Excited? Did she think of me at all? My phone chimed with a new message from the unknown number. Where are you? She's here and getting impatient. So they were both downstairs now. Good. I took out my own phone and called Linda. My heart pounded as it rang. George? She sounded surprised, a little annoyed. Everything okay? Just checking in, I said, keeping my voice casual. How's lunch with Diane? A slight pause. Fine, we're just finishing up dessert. That's nice, I said, staring at the hotel room ceiling. Anything good? Oh, just the chocolate cake thing she always gets. Linda's voice was steady, practiced. Listen, we're in the middle of talking about her daughter's college applications. Can I call you back later? No need, I said. I just wanted to let you know I made dinner reservations for tonight. Thought we could use a nice evening out. Tonight? Another pause. That sounds lovely, but I might be late getting home. Diane was hoping I could help her look over some of Sarah's essays. No problem, I replied. Reservations not until 8. I thought we could have a drink first. Open that bottle of Cabernet we've been saving. Perfect, she said, relief evident in her voice. I should be home by 6. Great, love you. The briefest of hesitations. Love you too. I ended the call and let out a long breath. 27 years of marriage, and I'd never caught her in a direct lie until today. The anger I'd been holding at bay surged forward, hot and electric. I wanted to smash something, to tear this room apart, to march downstairs and confront them both in front of everyone. Instead, I texted the number again. Change of plans. Meet me in the room instead. Coming up now. I positioned myself in the chair by the window, angled so it wasn't immediately visible from the door. Then I waited, perfectly still, controlling my breathing the way my dad had taught me when we went hunting as a kid. Patience, control. The prey would come to you if you just stayed quiet enough. The electronic lock whirred at 2:58 p.m. The door swung open, and there he was. Young, like I'd expected. Maybe 30. Tall, fit, wearing an expensive-looking button-down shirt and designer jeans. He stepped into the room, letting the door close behind him. Before he noticed me sitting there, his eyes widened. Hello, I said calmly. I think we need to talk. The young man froze, hand still on the door handle. You're not Linda, he said, stating the obvious. No. I gestured to the chair opposite mine. Sit down. His face cycled through emotions, confusion, alarm, then a strange sort of resignation. He sat perching on the edge of the chair like he might need to bolt at any moment. You're her husband, he said, not a question. I nodded. George, and you are? David, he swallowed hard. Look, I should probably go. Not yet. My voice was eerily calm, even to my own ears. Linda's on her way up, I made sure of it, and we're all going to have a conversation. David glanced at the door, clearly calculating his chances of making a clean escape. You could leave, I said, but then you'd miss the chance to explain yourself. And, believe me, this is your best opportunity to do that. He studied my face, perhaps looking for signs of the violence he expected. Finding none, he relaxed slightly, though his posture remained tense. How long have you known? He asked. Since yesterday. A text meant for Linda came to my phone instead. David winced. That was me. I must have misdialed. Don't say you're sorry, I cut him off. Not unless you mean it. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. I took the opportunity to really look at him, this stranger who had inserted himself into my marriage. He was handsome in that clean-cut corporate way, the type of man who worked out regularly and knew which wines to order, the opposite of a mechanic with perpetually oil-stained hands. How long? I finally asked. David looked down at his expensive shoes. 6 months. The answer hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Christmas. Our anniversary. My birthday. All while they were... She told me you were distant, he said, as if that explained everything. That you were more married to your business than to her. I laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. And you believe that? The classic excuse for cheating? I thought you'd be more original. He had the decency to look embarrassed. It wasn't like that at first. We met at the gym, just talked. She seemed lonely. And you decided to cure her loneliness out of the goodness of your heart? My control was slipping. How noble. It wasn't planned, David insisted. It just happened. Things like this don't just happen, I said. You make choices. Both of you made choices. Every text, every lie, every time you met in this room, those were choices. I was about to say more when my phone buzzed. A text from Linda. On my way up now. Had to shake someone off at the bar. Some creep was bothering me. My mouth went dry. This was it. The confrontation I'd been orchestrating was about to happen. She's coming, I told David. Any moment now she's going to walk through that door, expecting to see you, and instead she'll find both of us. David paled. What do you want from me? It was a good question. What did I want? Revenge? Answers? Some pathetic competition for my wife's affection? The truth, I said finally. That's all. I want both of you to look me in the eye and tell me the truth. The card reader on the door beeped, and we both turned to watch the handle turn. The door opened, and Linda stepped into the room. For a moment, just one brief moment, her face lit up with the smile she used to reserve for me. Then her eyes found mine, and the smile vanished like it had never existed. George. My name came out as a whisper. She stood frozen in the doorway, one hand still on the handle, her purse dangling from her other wrist. The same purse I'd given her for her birthday 2 years ago. Hello, Linda, I said. Please, come in. Join us. Her eyes darted between David and me, calculating, assessing the situation. The door closed behind her with a soft click that seemed to echo in the silence. What are you doing here? She finally asked. Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing, I replied. Diane's daughter having trouble with those college essays. The color drained from her face. She looked at David, who stared down at his hands. Don't blame him, I said. He didn't give you away. Your text messages did. The ones that accidentally came to my phone last night. Linda's hand went to her throat, a nervous gesture I'd seen 1,000 times over our years together. Usually it appeared when she was lying about something small, a surprise birthday party, an unexpected gift, never for something like this. George, I can explain. 6 months, I cut her off. That's what David tells me. 6 months you've been lying to my face every day. She shot David an accusing look, which he avoided by studying the hotel carpet. Is it true? I pressed. Linda took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. Always dignified, my wife, even in the middle of being caught in her own deception. Yes, she admitted. 6 months. I nodded, absorbing the confirmation of what I already knew. Somehow, hearing it from her made it more real, more painful. Why? The question came out smaller than I intended, more wounded. Linda moved further into the room but didn't sit down. I was lonely, George. You were always at the garage, always tired, always talking about carburetors and transmissions and customer complaints. So this is my fault? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Because I worked hard to provide for us? It's not about fault, she said. It's about feeling seen, appreciated, wanted. And he made you feel that way? I nodded toward David, who looked like he desperately wished he could disappear. Yes, Linda's voice strengthened. He did. I turned to David. And what about you? What did you get out of this? He finally looked up, meeting my gaze. I love her, he said simply. The words hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just sex. This was worse. This was emotional. This was plans and futures and promises. Do you? I asked Linda. Do you love him? For the first time, she faltered. Her eyes, which had been so direct and defiant a moment before, slid away from mine. "I don't know," she whispered. "I think so. Maybe." That maybe hung in the air between us, a flimsy, pathetic word to describe the demolition of 27 years of marriage. I stood up and walked to the window, suddenly needing space, air, distance from both of them. The view showed only the hotel parking lot, and beyond it, the highway. Cars speeding by, people inside them heading somewhere important, unaware of the small apocalypse happening in room 412. "Did you ever think about ending it?" I asked without turning around. "The affair, I mean. Or were you planning to leave me eventually?" I heard movement, Linda sitting down on the edge of the bed. The springs creaked slightly under her weight. "I don't know," she said again. That phrase was becoming a refrain. 27 years together, and all she had to offer were maybes and I don't knows. "We talked about it," David offered, "about what this meant long term." I turned back to face them. "And?" David glanced at Linda, who nodded for him to continue. "We hadn't decided anything concrete," he said, "but we both knew it was serious." "Serious enough to destroy a 27-year marriage," I said, "but not serious enough to be honest about it." Linda flinched. "I didn't want to hurt you." A laugh escaped me, harsh and ugly. "Well, you failed spectacularly at that." "George?" "No," I cut her off. "You don't get to George me right now, not after 6 months of lying to my face, not after I had to find out through a misdirected text." The room fell silent again. David looked uncomfortable, shifting in his chair. Good. He should be uncomfortable. "What happens now?" Linda finally asked. That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? What did happen now? In movies, this would be where I either forgave her dramatically or stormed out in a rage. Real life wasn't so clean-cut. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. From it, I extracted the key card to the room. "This is yours," I said, placing it on the desk. "Paid for the night. You two should stay. Finish what you came here to do." Linda's eyes widened. "George, no." "I packed a bag for you," I continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "It's at home on our bed, along with our marriage certificate. After today, I'd appreciate it if you stayed with your sister for a while. Or with him." I nodded toward David. "I don't really care which." "You're kicking me out?" Linda's voice rose. "Number, I'm giving you what you want, freedom to pursue whatever this is." I gestured between them, without the inconvenience of sneaking around. David stood up suddenly. "Listen, man, I know you're angry." "I'm not angry," I interrupted, surprised to find it was mostly true. "I'm finished." The word hung in the air. Finished. The simplicity of it was almost beautiful. 27 years, I said, looking directly at Linda. "And you threw it away for hotel rooms and text messages and feeling zine?" I hope it was worth it. I moved toward the door, but Linda jumped up and blocked my path. "That's it?" she demanded. "You're just leaving? After everything we've built together?" "I'm not the one who left, Linda." My voice was steady. "You did that 6 months ago. You just didn't bother to tell me." Linda's face crumpled, tears finally breaking through her composed facade. "You can't just throw away 27 years. We can fix this. Go to counseling. Work through it." "Like you worked through your dissatisfaction by sleeping with him?" The words came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't stop them. "You had options, Linda. You could have talked to me, told me you were unhappy, given me a chance to change things, to be what you needed." "I tried," she protested. "For years I tried. You were never there, never listening." David cleared his throat awkwardly. "Maybe I should go." "No," I said firmly. "You're part of this. You don't get to walk away now." He sank back into his chair, resignation on his face. I turned back to Linda. "What exactly did you try? When did you ever sit me down and say, 'George, I'm so lonely, I'm thinking about having an affair'? When did you give me that warning?" She looked away. "It wasn't like that." Then what was it like? I pressed. Explain it to me. Help me understand how we got from planning our retirement together to this. Linda wiped her eyes. It started small, conversations at the gym. He listened to me, asked about my day, my feelings, things you stopped asking about years ago. So you decided that justified betraying our marriage vows? No, she shook her head fiercely. It wasn't calculated like that. It just evolved. One coffee after working out, then lunch, then more. I looked at David. And you knew she was married the whole time? He nodded, having the decency to look ashamed. She wore her ring, never tried to hide it. Something about his honesty, this stranger being more forthright with me than my own wife, struck me as darkly comical. Well, points for not adding lying to the list, I guess, I said with bitter sarcasm. I moved past Linda to the door, but she grabbed my arm. George, please, don't leave like this. Let's talk more. At home. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Just us. I gently removed her hand. There is no just us anymore, Linda. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You don't mean that, she insisted. You're hurt and angry. You have every right to be. But we can get through this. I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman I'd shared my life with, the mother of our children, the person I'd thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. That's the thing, I said quietly. I don't want to get through this. I don't want to be with someone I can't trust, someone who could lie to my face every day for 6 months. Her tears fell freely now. People make mistakes, George. Terrible ones. But they can be forgiven. Maybe, I conceded, but some things can't be fixed. Some broken things stay broken. I opened the door. The bright light of the hallway seemed jarring after the dim hotel room. I'll be staying at Mike's for a few days, I said. That should give you enough time to pack whatever you want to take with you. George? Goodbye, Linda. I closed the door behind me, cutting off whatever she was about to say. In the empty hallway, I finally let out the breath I felt like I'd been holding since I first saw that text message. My hands were shaking now, the calm I'd maintained in the room evaporating. I made it to the elevator before the first tear fell. 3 weeks later, I was still staying at Mike's place above the garage. His spare room was small, but comfortable enough. I'd developed a routine, wake up early, work late, eat takeout, fall asleep watching old movies on his couch. Functional, if not exactly living. The divorce papers sat on the kitchen counter, filled out, but unsigned. My lawyer said I was being more than generous. Linda hadn't contested anything. She'd moved in with her sister temporarily. At least that's what our daughter told me when she called. The kids were taking it hard. They were adults with families of their own now, but finding out your parents' marriage wasn't what you thought still hurts at any age. They'd always seen us as the solid ones, the marriage that had weathered all storms. I hadn't told them about David, just said we'd grown apart. No need to tarnish their memories of their mother. I was closing up the garage one evening, everyone else already gone home, when the bell above the door chimed. I turned, wiping my hands on a rag, to find Linda standing there. She looked different, thinner. Her hair was shorter, too, cut in a way that framed her face. She'd always talked about cutting it, but never had the courage. "Hi, George," she said, her voice soft and uncertain. None of the confidence she'd shown in room 412. "Linda," I nodded. "What can I do for you?" She held up a manila envelope. I signed the papers. My lawyer said I should deliver them in person rather than mail them, something about proper procedure. I took the envelope, feeling its weight. 27 years reduced to legal documents. "Thank you." I placed it on the counter beside the cash register. An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with the ticking of the old clock on the wall and the distant hum of traffic from the highway. "How have you been?" she finally asked. "Managing," I replied. "You?" "Same." She looked around the garage, her eyes landing on the framed photo of us at the grand opening, 23 years ago. David and I were not seeing each other anymore. I let her statement hang in the air for a moment. Was I supposed to care? To feel vindicated? Some petty part of me did, but mostly I felt nothing. "That's not why I came here," Linda continued, filling the silence. "I wanted to give you something else, too." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, worn notebook I instantly recognized. Linda's journal from our first year of marriage, when we were so poor we ate ramen noodles 4 nights a week and counted pennies for gas. "I found this when I was packing," she said, holding it out to me. "I thought you should have it." I took it hesitantly, the leather cover soft and familiar against my fingers. "Why?" "I've been doing a lot of thinking." Linda crossed her arms, a defensive posture I recognized from every argument we'd ever had, about what happened, what I did. "And?" I prompted when she fell silent. "And I was wrong," she said simply. "Not just the affair, but what I said about you not being there, not listening. I rewritten our history to justify what I did, but it wasn't true." I leaned against the counter, suddenly needing the support. Of all the things I'd imagined Linda saying when I saw her again, this wasn't one of them. "The journal," she continued, nodding to it. "Read what I wrote on our first anniversary, page 118. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened the notebook, the pages yellowed with age, and found the entry. Linda's handwriting was neater back then, more careful. "1 year married to George today. When I think about everything he's given up for us, his scholarship, his dream of engineering school, I feel overwhelmed with gratitude. He never complains, never makes me feel guilty, just gets up every day and works those long hours at the garage, learning everything he can. Says he's going to own his own shop someday. I believe him. I've never known anyone more determined or loyal. Sometimes I watch him sleeping and wonder how I got so lucky." I closed the journal, something tight and painful in my chest. "Why show me this now?" I asked. Linda's eyes were damp. "Because I want you to know that I saw you, George. I always did. And somewhere along the way I forgot. I got selfish, bored, restless. But it wasn't because you weren't enough." She reached for the door. "That's all I wanted to say. I'll go now." "Wait," I said before Linda could open the door. I wasn't sure why I stopped her. Maybe it was the journal. Maybe it was seeing her vulnerable for the first time in years. Or maybe I just needed closure better than what happened in room 412. "Do you ever wonder," I asked, "where we went wrong? When we stopped being those people in the journal?" Linda turned back, her hand falling from the door handle. "All the time." "And?" She took a deep breath. "I think we both changed, little by little. You built this place," she gestured around the garage, "and I was proud of you. But somewhere along the way, I started resenting it too. The long hours, the weekends, the constant shop talk." I nodded. She wasn't wrong. "And I never said anything," she continued. "I just pulled away, found other things to fill my time, book clubs, gym classes." She paused. "David?" The name still stung, but less than before, more like an old injury that aches when it rains. "I should have seen it," I admitted. "Should have noticed you pulling away." "We both made mistakes," Linda said. "Mine were just bigger, unforgivable." I studied her face, the face I'd woken up beside for nearly 3 decades, the face I'd loved for half my life. "I don't hate you," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "I thought I would, but I don't." "I wouldn't blame you if you did." She attempted a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I picked up the envelope with the divorce papers, feeling their weight. "You know, when I first saw that text message, I wanted to hurt you like you hurt me. I wanted revenge, to make you suffer." "I deserved that." "No," I shook my head. "Nobody deserves that, even after what happened." We stood in silence for a moment, the ghost of our marriage hovering between us. "Do you think," Linda asked hesitantly, "in another life we might have made it?" The question caught me off guard. "Maybe," I said finally, "in a life where we talked more, where I paid attention, where you told me when you were unhappy." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I hope you find happiness, Linda," I said, and meant it. "I really do." "You too, George." This time, when she reached for the door, I didn't stop her. The bell chimed as she left, a sound I'd heard thousands of times but would always associate with this moment now. I picked up the journal again, running my thumb over its worn cover. Then I placed it carefully in my desk drawer. Not to keep, but not to discard either. A reminder of what was, what could have been, and what I would never take for granted again.